Hello, I am Mitchell Helm, and this is my marine biology project explaining and practicing the use of the scientific method. And for this project, we'll be asking the question, does fire need oxygen to exist? And the first step we will take here is to take this candle in this vase here and light it. And with this, we can see that a fire has been produced and is continuing to stay lit with oxygen. So a fire can be produced with oxygen present. So the observation here would be that fire can exist with the presence of oxygen. Now that observation would lead us into a question, and that question would be, can fire exist without the presence of oxygen? And so in order to find that out, we would take a few steps. The first step would be research. So we would research the subject, we would research possible theories, possible answers, possible anything and everything that we could on the subject matter and the topic. We would do our own independent research, we would use outside sources, anything that we could to research if fire could exist without the presence of oxygen. So once we've done our research, and we can assume that all the research had been done and has been done, and that no definitive answer has been made on the question. So after our research, that would lead us into our hypothesis. And our hypothesis would state fire can only exist with the presence of oxygen. That would be the hypothesis that I would make. So with that hypothesis, we would then run some experiments. These experiments would either prove or disprove or help better prove whether or not fire can or cannot exist without the presence of oxygen. So for the experiment, we will keep it very simple, and we will use this vase, this candle, and this fire that is already lit and has been lit for the past 90 seconds or so. And with that, our experiment has already begun. So we now know that fire can exist with the presence of oxygen. So the next step in the experiment would be to cut all oxygen from this vase, from this fire, and see if it will continue to exist and continue to thrive without any oxygen. So I'll bring this a little bit closer here. We're going to put this over the top of it, cutting the oxygen. It'll take about 10-15 seconds, and we'll see once the oxygen is all gone if the fire continues to thrive. And so I'll keep it covered right here just like that. And this is part of our experiment, so we will be watching this flame closely, observing it. We would be keeping track of how long it's continuing to thrive, which isn't long because the oxygen is very fast decreasing. And as you can already tell, this flame is basically non-existent already at this point. So that with about a second or two left, we can now use this experiment to say that the fire is completely out and help better prove that fire probably cannot exist without the presence of oxygen. So what we would do from here is we would conduct this experiment again over and over, probably 5, 10, 20, depending on the subject matter, 100 times if we had to. We would do it under various conditions, use different size cylinders, different size vases, different ways of starting the fire and ending the fire, different ways of cutting the oxygen from the fire. And we would run this experiment over and over and over, and we would continue to get the same result over and over and over. And that same result would be that fire cannot exist without the presence of oxygen. And with our research in hand, with our hypothesis made and tested through the experiments that we've done, we can then draw a conclusion, and that conclusion would be that fire can only exist with the presence of oxygen. It cannot exist without the presence of oxygen. So our last step would be to report our findings, and this video is my reported findings on the question of, does fire need oxygen to exist?